You know, there's a moratorium on drilling right now. I'm sorry, did you hear that? There's a moratorium on drilling right now. Oh, you have a lease? I'm sorry, but you know, we are going to be focusing on improving the health and welfare of our community. We're going to focus on putting some streets and roads and water capacity. We're going to clean up, we're going to improve our education. And right, so I'm sorry, you're not paying attention. So, you know, when you can control jurisdiction, you have police powers, for example, within your community. Take them if you can. Unify your families. Maybe create the alliance that you have here. But instead of making an alliance, what do they call them? Work with your legislature and create a legal entity that can represent the heirs. Ask for the Hawaiian-Alaskan Act. Ask for an act of Congress to protect your lands. I can share documents with that. We've actually talked to the Hawaiian folks about their plight. Hawaii, the queen there, had to surrender to military forces from the United States. And she decided that she didn't want to have a war between their sticks and our, firepower. And it would be an unfair fight. So they negotiated, I guess you could call it a negotiated treaty, and decided to become part of the United States. So if I'm going to go back to New Mexico and I'm going to do some research on and try and be a good ally to Texas and see if we can't see what we've done in the state of New Mexico and anything that we've done, if we can help with moving you along on the issues that you guys are facing. The significant difference, as I mentioned, is that the communal versus the individual land grants. And I also noticed that somebody mentioned something about some violence in Columbus, New Mexico. And so I'll be working with Mr. One of the folks here about looking into the land commissioner when he mentioned some violence. We're going to see with our film crew and our film folks if we can't try and weave a message between Texas and New Mexico about similar violence with the video that Mr. Patterson showed earlier. We also have a church. I'm not sure if you guys have ever heard of the Penitentes, Jesuit order of Catholicism. So the Jesuit order was a Spanish.
They're not Jesuits.
Is that? No, I know they're not. I'm saying. So we have a couple of religious factors in our community. We have all the land grants typically had a cemetery, a church in their community. And so in New Mexico, we have a small church that's, I don't know how, built maybe the 1500s, a very old church, has come under siege by that corporation that we had. So we're looking to really help that community. If you notice the water film that we had, there was a gentleman in a wheelchair. He's the head of that church. I only bring up the Jesuits because when they came into this country, they worked to spread a different religion in this community. And so when you come at the tip of a sword, we really try and work real sensibly and have a lot of sensitivity to the atrocities that have happened in this country with many, many different ethnic groups. We have a lot of wars, and so I think somebody mentioned earlier that we have to look forward, but you have to look in the past to know where you can go forward. And so one of the things I want to connect with Texas on in our group here is what can New Mexico do to align. We have, about 3-4 years ago, we have a concept of organizing a land grant association across the world. And that organization will look something similar to ARP, so that instead of each person here trying to organize their own organizational model, that we would have a larger group that would be able to have enough. And ARP's a good example because you can have $10 a year and have hundreds of thousands of people part of it, and then advocate for fairness, equity along a lot of the discussions that we're having here. But as you can see, our land grant has had a lot of bigger issues, more issues facing us directly, so we've not been able to look at that model. But I would like to reach out to Texas and all of the different families and say, let's talk about creating some chapter organizations. Maybe we can do it by county, by region, but I think it'd be a great exercise to unify all of our different people. And I would also welcome anybody from Texas that we put on the road show that you guys do in the future and invite you to New Mexico to our community of Trisco, and we would welcome you and host you for an event there. And we really are happy that we got invited to this event. We're happy to meet all the members of the executive board, and I'm gonna stop talking and kind of open it up for questions, because New Mexico is, some people say we're a lot farther ahead, and I would say we're not. I still think we have a lot of challenges, and we are trying to fight for the health and welfare of our community. At the end of the day, we want to make sure that our community has the right amount of assets available to them, and we're really pushing to get our tax base taken away from the county and the city, given to our land grant. And we have about 40,000 people that live in our community, so we have the fiscal nest to do that. Some communities don't have any taxation benefits, but we want to not only help our community, and I mentioned we sit on a board with 33 other land grants, and so we do have collaboration across New Mexico. And I think that would be a good idea if we reached out to Texas and invited some of your groups, if you wanted to participate with us on maybe an annual basis or something. But I will open it up for questions, and once again, thank you for letting me speak. Did I mention land patent? Yes. Stand up.
Yeah, stand up, girl.
You mentioned a case number that I don't exactly
She's
remember.
referring to the Atrisco case.
Yeah.
So we have a case in 1892 where the town of Atrisco sued the federal government under the Court of Private Land Claims for encroachment over the river in New Mexico, the Rio Grande. And so what separates us from Albuquerque is the Rio Grande. And so we filed in federal court. And you know, it's always better to file in federal court, you know, standing in the original court, not having to go through state, because states have a lot of prejudices. States know so much about what they don't know, and then they prejudice so much about what they don't know, and then they make decisions about what they don't know. In federal courts, a little bit, they don't really know much about your issues locally. So that was a big case. There's also a Summa versus California, that where in California the sovereignty clause under the Article 6 of the Constitution applied, and so that it says that if you have a treaty coupled with a land patent, that's perfect title. And there's another case, Brandt versus a railroad in 2013 and 2012, very recent, where they referenced the Treaty of Guadalupe, and they referenced the land patent, and they referenced the sovereignty clause, and that the court said that we don't want you to come back here. We've already addressed the Treaty of Guadalupe and the land patent, and the land patent is perfect title. So the land patent issued from the federal government is different than what you guys got here. So in New Mexico, the federal government, Theodore Roosevelt, issued a federal patent after a survey by the Court of Private Land Claims and the Surveyor General, and then they certified it, and then they issued us. So BLM records will reflect, if you go to BLM records, you'll search the Atrisco grant, you'll find a registered patent.
Now, I know there's Spanish land grants that are registered in Washington, D.C. in their archives. And if they have ours in the state of Texas, what makes it so different? The Spanish land grants of New Mexico and Texas, to where, you know, the government is recognizing them, and it's registered. And, you know, the fact that, you know, we know the Guadalupe Hidalgo Treaty is the same as the one from New Mexico, and we just kind of I mean, it's kind of like, they really went in there in 1923 and 41, messed up the whole treaty.
They try to ratify it.
They try to ratify, well, several times.
Yeah, we've met with the Two Countries Online. They you know, Joe Sierra and his group have really shared with us their perspective on that. The perspective we've taken with the treaty has not been at that depth. In New Mexico, we have our New Mexico Constitution, Article 2, Section 5 of the Bill of Rights. Senator Larosolo and Montoya before the Enabling Act of New Mexico embedded in the New Mexico Constitution provisions to protect the inhabitants of our community.
So they were protecting the treaty itself at that
They're
time?
protecting the people,
With the treaty.
referencing the treaty under those provisions.
So you had to do something as the people in order to get the treaty to work? Is that what you said?
No, the treaty in New Mexico is recognized under state constitution, but you probably have a better chance of getting a ticket for speeding 5 miles over the speed limit than you do violating the Treaty of Guadalupe, or a lot of other constitutional things. You know, people with ADA, other constitutional violations occur, and then you don't get a citation, right? You have to kind of sue for that. It's expensive.
My question is, you had said that you got the land cap, a federal land cap. What year was that?
May 5th of 1905.
1905.
It predated the Enabling Act, so the United States wanted all the land patents, all the land issues to be settled before they did the Enabling Act of New Mexico, 1911.
Oh, you got it.
You got it pat in the state.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Jaime is one of our board members of the, so we have a Town of Atrisco Federal Board and then the Political Subdivision Board of, and Jaime's been in the land grant arena a lot longer than I have. I just got promoted to my highest level of incompetence, so I'm just here.
I'm an organizer like her. I'm an organizer like the woman, farmer girl woman that was here earlier.
Lotus.
Very proud of you folks, you know.
Lotus.
And, you know, we don't want to get into a discussion of the many and the few, okay? Because you need this much, you know, whatever ingredients to make a political solution, one person versus the 1,000, right? That's the argument from organizers of the many and the few. But that's a whole different thing. That has to be based on, like the woman said, in the farm worker struggle.